3,500 cattle, dying of thirst, while their owner sobbed into the phone at 5 in the morning, begging for help. And me? I just sat on my porch, sipping black coffee beside my brand new well, watching the steam curl into the cool Texas air like nothing ever happened. Funny how power shifts. See, they thought I was just some stubborn old farmer, until I stopped playing nice. Let me back up a sec. My name's Elijah Blackwater, and I've lived on these 50 acres outside Dry Creek, Texas for 38 years. Long enough to know when the clouds lie, when the soil's angry, and when neighbors turn into enemies in pearl necklaces and fancy boots. My granddad bought this land in 1952. Not just the dirt, but the eastern shore of what folks call Sapphire Basin Lake, about 20% of the whole thing. More importantly, he secured the mineral and water rights. Water is life, Eli, he used to say. Someday folks will wake up to that. Turns out the old man was a prophet. Now, years back, maybe 20 or so, I made a deal with a neighbor named Dolores Hanley. She had a modest cattle farm back then, maybe 500 head, and she needed water bad. I had plenty, so we shook on it, a simple rental agreement. She could draw from my portion of the lake at a dirt cheap rate. I figured it was the neighborly thing to do. But Dolores didn't stay small. Over 2 decades, her operation exploded, buying land, laying pipe, installing industrial-scale irrigation like she was building an empire. Today, she runs 3,500 head, ships milk statewide, and the papers call her the Queen of Cattle County. Meanwhile, she's still paying me that same bargain price we agreed on in '04. Not once did she offer to renegotiate. And you know what? I didn't ask. That was my first mistake. My second? Thinking success might make someone grateful. Then came the drought, worst in 50 years. My crops were drying up, lake levels were plummeting, and I figured, fine, time to dig my own well. I got the permits, lined up the drilling crew, and on a hot Tuesday morning, they rolled in. We were barely 20 feet down when a shiny black SUV pulled up. Out stepped Veronica Price, the HOA president, tight bun, heels sinking in the dirt, waving a cease and desist letter like she was serving divine law. "You can't drill, Elijah," she snapped. "It's against HOA regulations, affects property values." I stared at her, me in boots and sweat-stained overalls, thinking, "Lady, my family was here before your precious HOA even had a name." But I didn't say that. Yet. Then came the roar of Dolores's big Ford truck. She hopped out in those ridiculous ostrich skin boots, a Stetson tilted just so, playing the ranch queen to a T. "Elijah," she said, not even a hello, "we need to talk about this well situation." I crossed my arms. "Ain't much to talk about. I need water for my crops." She scoffed. "I've got 3,500 cattle to hydrate. Your little vanity project threatens the whole water table." Vanity project. That stung. "You rent your water from me," I said calmly. "Don't forget that." Then she laughed. "Please, that little agreement? I've been paying you pennies for decades. I'm the economic engine of this whole county. You're just a dirt farmer who refuses to adapt." Veronica chimed in. "The board voted unanimously, Elijah. No new wells." She smiled like a cat who just found the cream. "Continue and you'll face a $50,000 fine plus litigation. Dolores sits on the Water Commission, by the way. We know what we're doing." They thought they had me, trapped under HOA rules and county politics. But they didn't know about the filing cabinet in my office, the one labeled "Keep Forever" in my dad's handwriting. That night, I opened it up. Inside, a gold mine. Original deeds, geological surveys, riparian rights, all signed, sealed, notarized. The east side of Sapphire Basin was mine, legally. No HOA control, no shared community ownership, just good old-fashioned private property. Dolores's whole setup, her pipes, pumps, her entire operation, was built on water she'd been renting from me for 20 years, and underpaying for all of it. So I did what any self-respecting farmer would do. I showed up at the next HOA meeting, dusty boots and all. The room was packed, store clerks, diner owners, old-timers and new money, everyone buzzing from the drought drama. I walked to the front, pulled out the documents, and laid it all out. "This," I said, holding up the deed, "is the original 1952 agreement. This land, this lakefront, these water rights, they all belong to my family. Always have." Veronica turned pale. Dolores's lawyer snatched the old rental contract out of my hand. You could see the color drain from her face as he read it. Still valid, still binding, still priced for a farm that no longer existed. But I wasn't done. I pulled out the results from my monitoring system, installed just weeks earlier. Your cattle have been pulling over 150,000 gallons a day. Not only are you underpaying, you're overusing by a mile. The room went quiet. Dolores stood frozen, her mouth slightly open. Like maybe, just maybe, she finally realized she wasn't the queen anymore. And right then, I smiled, for the first time in days, and said, "You might want to double-check whose lake you've been drinking from all these years." Let me tell you something. I've never seen silence hit a room like that. Nobody said a word. Not Veronica, not Dolores, not even the lawyer in the $1,000 suit. Just dead silence, like the air got sucked out the room and no one knew how to breathe anymore. But I wasn't looking for applause. I just packed my papers, tipped my hat, and walked out. Slow, steady, like a man who knew he finally had the upper hand after 20 years of being overlooked. Next morning, I went back to the well site. The drilling crew was halfway to the aquifer by then. The foreman grinned when he saw me. "Hit good water at 200 feet, he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "You're sitting on a gold vein down here, Mr. Blackwater." And he wasn't kidding. That well, clean, cold, flowing like a spring river, was pushing 500 gallons a minute, enough to keep my crops alive, my livestock thriving, and maybe, just maybe, rewrite how water flowed through this county. Word spread fast. The HOA lost its backbone. Folks started calling me, small farmers, old friends, even people who once sided with Dolores. They were tired of her monopoly, her intimidation, her sky-high rates. One by one, they asked if I'd share my water. Not for free, but fair, honest. And I did. I started small, helped Samuel Myers, who ran a dairy 10 miles south. Then the Jacksons, the Brooks family, even old man Chavez, who'd been barely scraping by since Dolores raised his fees last spring. What she had turned into control, I turned into community. Her empire had been built on theft. Mine would be built on trust. Meanwhile, over at Hanley Ranch, things were falling apart, fast. Dolores tried to dig her own well, but she didn't have the permits. And even if she did, her land sat too high, too dry. By day 4, her troughs were empty. Cattle wandered, lowing in distress, licking fences, metal gates, even each other, just to find moisture. By day 5, they started dying. The sounds. If you've ever raised cattle, you know. The labored breathing, the way their heads hang, the look in their eyes, like they're asking why you're letting this happen. I saw it all from my back porch, and it didn't feel good. Not one bit. But I didn't break. Then came the call. It was exactly 5 a.m. again, 7 days after the first one. Dolores's number lit up my screen. This time her voice was raw, like sandpaper scraping regret. She said she'd lost nearly 100 head. She said she was ruined. She said she was sorry. I didn't say much. Just stood by the window, looking out at my own herd. 20 Holsteins drinking peacefully from a trough fed by the well she tried to stop. "You made your choice," I told her, quiet but firm. "When you used the HOA to bully me, when you underpaid me for years, when you laughed in my face and said I didn't matter." She sobbed, begged, said she had investors, contracts, loans she'd default on, that hundreds of livelihoods depended on her, that history would remember me as the man who let thousands of animals die out of pride. "No," I said, "history will remember that I protected what was mine. And you gambled your future on water that never belonged to you." She hung up. But the next day, she came in person. No boots, no truck, no sunglasses or swagger, just a worn-out woman in dusty jeans and a fraying flannel shirt, standing at my gate with nothing left to hide behind. "Elijah," she whispered, eyes rimmed red, "please, just hear me out." I didn't move. Duke, my old shepherd, stood beside me, tail stiff, ears high. I didn't invite her in. She said the ranch was bankrupt, that the bank took her house, her land, even her truck. The cattle that hadn't died would be picked up tomorrow, transported to sanctuaries and smaller farms. She said she didn't come to beg, just to say thank you, for at least making sure they'd live. I looked at her, and for the first time in 2 decades, I saw her clearly, not the queen of Cattle County, just a woman who built her fortune on stolen ground and finally felt the earth crumble. "You don't owe me thanks," I said. "Just remember what happens when you forget that respect matters more than power." She nodded slowly, then turned and walked away. And that, right there, was the end of Dolores Hanley, but not the end of the story. Weeks later, the town held a meeting, same community center, different tone. They asked me to speak. I brought a box of documents and a flash drive. I stood in front of my neighbors and told the whole truth, no spin, no pride, just facts. "This was never about revenge," I said. "It was about standing up when someone tries to take what's rightfully yours, about saying no when others think you won't." People nodded, some clapped. Dr. Malcolm, retired now, used to run the grain co-op, stood up and said, "Elijah, we should have backed you from day one. We were afraid, and that was wrong." I didn't need their guilt, just their understanding. Because power isn't about money. It's about controlling the things others take for granted and choosing how you share them. Now, the well runs strong, the land's healing, and my little cooperative, it's growing by the week. As for Dolores, last I heard she was living with her sister in San Marcos trying to start over. Maybe she'll learn, maybe she won't. But one thing's for damn sure. Sometimes the smallest farmer can teach the biggest lesson. And sometimes, no is the most powerful word in the world. So, what do you think? Was I right to hold the line, or should I have given her one last chance? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this ain't just about cattle or wells. It's about justice, about boundaries, about what happens when the folks in charge finally hear the word no and realize they can't drink without permission.